Why is it that so many of us moms choose to outsource our financial decisions like investing to our partners? I hear this constantly when I meet moms at the park or birthday parties or wherever, and I tell them I host a podcast all about smart financial strategy for busy parents, and 9 times out of 10, they tell me it's their husbands that do all of the investing and handle all the finances. And we chat a little bit more, and then they're more vulnerable and they open up and they say, I don't even know what a stock is. I don't know what investing is. And I get it. When you're a busy parent, you have to divide and conquer. It's the only way to survive. But what if I told you that getting a little bit more involved would improve your marriage, decrease your chances of divorce, improve your own self-esteem, make you richer, and be a better role model for your children? Because that's truly what it is. And I'm going to break down a very big myth, which is that investing is hard, you need lots of money, and it can't be streamlined and automated, because it can be all of those things. So in this episode, I'm going to share why, specifically if you are a mom, you should definitely care, including some pretty jaw-dropping research. I'm going to take my background in finance and accounting and break down in a super simple way, what are all these terms? What is a stock? What is an ETF? What is an index fund? We're going to answer things like, how much should I actually be saving? What is the difference between saving and investing, and which is better? And how do I get started today if I know absolutely nothing and I'm starting from scratch? All you need is a phone and 15 minutes and you can become an investor. And I'm going to break all of that down in this episode. So stay with me. And if you learned something here and you find it helpful, please pay it forward and share it with 3 of your mom friends or anyone who struggles with this topic and has a desire to learn more. So let's go into an important disclaimer and then start the show. I'm a former chartered accountant and a strategist, but I'm not your financial advisor. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Any companies or ETFs mentioned are just examples, not specific recommendations. Finance is personal, so please do your own research or speak to a licensed professional before making any big moves with your money. So most of us know that women do tend to live longer than men on average. But in Australia, women are expected to live on average for 15 years as widows. That means 15 years of being responsible for every single bill, every investment, every financial decision. And a lot of data shows how much financial anxiety it then causes if you happen to be in a marriage where you did not have any visibility into your family finances. You weren't responsible for those decisions. It can be so stressful and overwhelming. And I know 2 women in my life personally, one's a family friend and one was my own aunt, where their partners died, both from cancer. So they had a little bit of time to prepare. And they spent the last several months of their lives just going through spreadsheets and financial admin of figuring out where the assets are, explaining decisions that had been made, explaining how to access money and move things around. And it was incredibly depressing, to be honest. I would never want to spend the last few months with my partner doing that. And it doesn't just benefit you in widowhood, it benefits you throughout your whole marriage, because research shows that arguments about money is the number 1 cause of divorce. It's higher than arguments around chores or parenting or sex. So by learning this, you're actually strengthening your marriage and you are decreasing your risk of divorce down the line. And it's also better for you individually, regardless if you're married or not. Women who have more financial literacy also have greater self-esteem and assertiveness. They're more likely to negotiate for a better salary. They're more likely to take risks in their own business that can massively pay off. And also, if you are a mom, don't you want to be a badass mom that is an investor too? If your kid is watching you check your investments and making good decisions, they'll absorb that. Your kids will then want to role model that and want to understand more. And it will actually set your children up for a much better life if they have financial literacy. By the end of this episode, you're definitely going to have learned something new, and I'm going to give you all the tools to get started right away. All right, let's move into some simple definitions of common financial terms. So what is a stock? A stock represents a share in a company, so that you, by owning that share, are a shareholder. So what does it really mean? It's just a piece of a company. It's just a tiny little piece. Imagine a company as a cake. You can divide that cake and cut it into slices, and you can own a slice of that cake, and that is your share. And if the company performs well, then you get to benefit by owning that slice of the company, and it will become more valuable over time. If it does poorly, your share of that cake is not going to be as valuable. Again, it's just a piece of a company that you can own. And when you own it, you become a shareholder. And it's valuable because if the company performs better, then you also get the benefit of the appreciation of that, or in the form of dividends. Okay, what is a dividend? It's just a little thank you payment. So when these companies perform well and they're profitable, all of the shareholders, everyone who owns a little bit of that company, gets a little bit of cash back. Now, not all companies issue dividends. Some choose not to, and they reinvest those profits into their companies, into ensuring they're staying competitive. But more mature, profitable companies do tend to issue dividends. So let's talk about an index fund or an ETF. An ETF is an electronically traded fund. So using our analogy here, imagine you could buy a prepackaged box with one slice of all these different types of cakes. You'd have chocolate and vanilla and red velvet. You might have 100 slices of cake in a box. And each slice of cake represents a company, and you own one piece of that company. And so some of those pieces of cake are going to be delicious, and other pieces of cake might be stale. So by getting a whole box of all of them, you're kind of hedging your bets that on average, you're going to have at least some of these pieces of cake that are going to be yummy. And that's what an electronically traded fund or an index fund is. Lots of companies in this prepackaged box, instead of just buying an individual slice of a company and then doing that over and over and over again, instead you can buy a small piece of lots of companies in this sort of bundle of stocks that you can get, known as an index fund or an ETF. So most people use the term index fund and ETF interchangeably. Most of the ETFs we talk about today are index funds, but not all index funds are ETFs. There are still some index funds that are unlisted that you have to go through a fund manager directly for. The index fund is sort of the strategy. It's the list of some of those top companies, and the ETF is the vehicle by which you can purchase it. ETFs are very popular in 2026 because of the speed and ease at which you can buy and sell index funds. But for our purposes today, just think of an ETF as a modern day index fund. So popular ETFs, the NASDAQ 100, those are going to be 100 of the high performing tech companies. The Global 100, that means you can buy a little piece of 100 of the best global companies. Isn't that amazing? The ASX 200, that is buying a tiny piece of 200 of the best Australian companies. So you don't have to think through which are the ones that I want to buy. You can just own all of it. You don't have to choose. Own it all. And that is a best practice when it comes to investing, is to ensure that you are diversified. You don't want to have all your eggs in one basket and just be choosing individual stocks. You don't know which ones are going to perform well and which ones aren't. Just own all of it. All right, so we've gone over some basic terms. Now let's jump into the easy and actionable steps. How do I start investing today? There are a few different apps you can use. Some popular ones in Australia are the CommSec Pocket app, which is Commonwealth Bank's app, as well as Pearler. I will tell you this story. I have a friend who had never invested a day in her life, thought it was really hard, thought you'd have to have a huge amount of money to invest, but you don't. You can invest as little as $50. And we were at a play date with the park, so both of our little boys were running around. And I said, let's do it right now. We went on our phone. We downloaded CommSec Pocket. Since she already banked with CBA, it was easy. We had to set up a Commonwealth Direct Investment account, which is like the wallet that you transfer money into, and then you can buy shares and invest from that wallet. And then we just looked up, what are some ETFs? We bought the Global 100. I think we put about $200 in there. And we bought the ASX 200. And I think it was only $50 that we invested. Each of those transactions costed $2. It's only $2 to invest up to $1,000 trade. It is so easy. Just go Google it or go download it on your phone and just move through the prompts. You just need your phone. You need 15 minutes. I need to have your ID handy. And that's it. You can search the ETFs that you want, find them, and then just however much money you're able to afford right now, just buy it. It's so much easier to learn by doing. And it is so easy these days. In the late 90s, you would actually have to pick up your phone or send in a fax to make a trade. It would cost $75 for every single trade. Incredibly difficult, high barrier. Now it's so easy. And a big tip that I have for anyone who does want to invest is to automate it. So if that sounded not super simple to you and you're dreading it, well, you just have to do it once. You just have to set it up one time, and then you can automate it. 2 days after you get paid, you can automatically transfer however much you want, fortnightly, monthly, into your wallet. that Commonwealth Direct investment account, and it will automatically just buy those shares on your behalf. And automating is the best way to set and forget. Just check in maybe every 6 months with how it's progressing and how it's performing. I actually think it's better not to check too often because you don't want to be stressed when markets do go down. They are volatile. They do go down and then they come back up again. You might be asking, when should I invest versus when should I save? So saving and investing serve two different purposes. Saving is for the purpose of a safety net. It's short term. If you are saving up for, let's say, a holiday coming up, or you're saving up to buy a house in the next 6 months, you want that money to be easily accessible, or just to have an emergency fund so that if something unexpected happens, you can access that cash very, very quickly. The other day, we went to the vet, had an unexpected bill. My cat needed dental work. It was $3,000. Having that easy to access cash is very, very helpful in those small instances. It's also helpful in the horrible what if scenarios. I have a mom friend who had a really bad workplace injury, injured her back, hasn't been able to work for over a year. Another mom friend recently diagnosed with breast cancer, 2 young kids. The brutal part about these types of things that happen to ordinary people all the time, even though you don't think it's going to happen to you, is that your medical bills, childcare bills all go up and your ability to work and generate income goes down. That's why it's so important to have a safety net. So that's the purpose of saving. The purpose of investing is for future you. It's for long-term wealth creation. Ideally, you do not want to touch that money until you really need it in the future. For retirement, buying a home in 10 years, that's when you want to access that cash. So it's very future oriented. And it's important to have both. So how much should you have in your savings account? Ideally, you should have about 6 months of your expenses in your savings account. So think about how much you pay in housing, rent or your mortgage, groceries, childcare, all of your bills, maintenance. Multiply that spending times 6. That is how much you should ideally have in your savings account rainy day fund. 6 months is just a general rule of thumb because it takes about 6 months to find another job. Beyond that, you don't need to have just cash sitting there, because the downside to having that cash is that it's not earning any interest. It's not growing. The number just stays the same. So it's very low risk. Nothing's happening to that money. Unlike when you invest it and it's volatile and it can go up and it can go down. But the downside is it's not working for you. You're not getting any money out of that. So you also want to have your money working for you. And that's why it's so important to invest it. Also, for those of you listening that has a mortgage, your offset account is going to be the best place to save money. The offset account is an account linked to your home loan, and any amounts in that account reduces the interest that you have to pay. So if you have a $500,000 loan and you have $50,000 in your offset, you only have to pay interest on the $450,000 difference, not the whole balance. So that's why putting money in your offset account is definitely the best place for the rainy day fund. It's still money that's working for you and reducing your interest, but it's easily accessible as well in the case of an emergency. One of the best ways that you can do both, save and invest at the same time, is by contributing to your super. The purpose and intention of your super is to save for future you, for your retirement, generate long-term wealth. You generally cannot touch this money until you are 60 or 65 if you're still working. Maxing out your super and doing as many contributions as you can to your super is one of the best things that you can do, because it acts like forced savings and it is tax advantaged. So although your employer contributes to your super, you can also contribute to that. The $30,000 cap of your super is both your contributions and your employer's contributions. So if your employer puts in $15,000, then you can also put in an additional $15,000. That's how much room you have left. And if you have already maxed out the $30,000, log into the ATO via MyGov if you have any carry forward contributions. What that means is in previous years, if you did not contribute the full $30,000, you are able to carry that forward and actually over contribute in any given year, using up some of that balance. So let's say you took CARES leave 2 years ago and you didn't contribute anything, or you contributed, let's say, $10,000 only. So the caps are always changing, but go back and see how much buffer you have left. So maybe you have $17,000 or $20,000 of unused contributions. You're going to want to go and contribute the rest of that. And this cap is set to increase again in July 1st of 2026 to $32,500. As long as your total super balance is less than $500,000, you can use those catch-up credits from the last 5 years. Super is tax advantaged. It only pays 15% tax, whereas if you're working and on employment income, you're most likely paying much more than 15%. So if you hold on to an investment for more than 1 year, when you sell, eventually, you will have to pay tax on it, called capital gains tax. Then you get a 50% discount. If you sell your investment outside of super, you're still paying up to 23.5% in tax, which is the 45% tax bracket plus Medicare and a 50% discount on that, which is the 23.5. But inside super, you still get a 1/3 discount. So that 15% super tax rate drops down to only 10% because you get a 1/3 discount inside your super. That is why it is so tax effective to hold investments inside your super and why you should prioritize super over investing. All right, here's another good question. Should I pay off debt first or invest? So paying off debt, if it's high interest debt, should always be paid off first before you invest. Credit card debt, buy now, pay later debt, anything with high interest, so 20%, you should definitely pay that off before you invest. Paying off your credit card regularly, ensuring that you're not accumulating interest is extremely important for good financial health. However, if you have low interest debt, for example, your mortgage, that's typically 5 to 7% right now. That's pretty low interest. And therefore, you can also invest while continuing to pay your regular repayments to that debt. And the reason is because if the market performs historically on average around 10% and you only have to pay about 6% in interest, then financially speaking, you're better off investing your money, earning a 10% return on your investment, and then the payment you have to give to the bank is only 6%. Financially speaking, that's when it makes sense. So we've just gone through saving, investing, your super, and also debt repayments. You might be wondering, what is the prioritized order of each? So from a financial perspective, number one would be ensuring you have a rainy day fund. Secondly, it would be paying off high interest debt. Thirdly, it would be investing in your super, including your catch-up contributions from the previous 5 years. And lastly, it would be investing in ETFs. However, that being said, what I would hate is if you never end up investing in ETFs because it's the last on your priority list and you just never get around to it. Whereas there's so much learning opportunity in actually going ahead and setting up an investment account, searching for different ETFs, and just working through that, checking on your investments. I believe it increases your financial literacy. So if you do have debt to be repaid and you do have super contributions to be made, could you just invest $50 or the bare minimum once a month so that you still don't miss out on the learning and you're still growing over time? I actually think doing all four concurrently is the best strategy because it will help you learn so much. Here's another question. Should I keep my finances separate from my partner or joint? A popular approach is the me, you, us model, where you each individually have your own accounts and then you have a joint account as well. So this is what I personally do with my husband. I have my own personal account. And that's because if I go out for a girls' night or if I want to buy my husband a really nice birthday gift, I want that to come out of my own account and my own money. And my husband does the same. And then we have a joint account that we both contribute into. And from that joint account is all of our living expenses, our mortgage, our childcare, our food, groceries. Another really great model, if you have a 2-income earning household, is that you use one person's salary to cover all of the bills. So that pays for all of your rent and housing and everything that you go through. And then you have the other person's salary that goes towards saving, investing, and discretionary. So the idea is one salary is just paying for life and the needs bucket of expenses. And then the other person's is paying for everything else. The more important thing is to ensure that you are transparent and open and having that communication about how you are managing your finances and that you're both aligned with the approach and have just full transparency into how money is coming in and going out. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you learned something new. I hope you're feeling excited and empowered to take the next step, whether it might be contributing more to super, putting some money away for your savings, or going ahead and investing. If you learned something, please share it with any mom friends that you know. Let's continue to have the conversation. Talk about this with your friends. When you learn something new, share it. That's just the best way to give back to your own community and to each other. I recently put out an episode that was all about the best investment strategies for your children, going through all the different options. But I want to emphasize that your own financial literacy and your own financial health as the parent is the number one most important priority. Before you're thinking about investing for your children, make sure that you have these basics down. Make sure that you understand it yourself, and then you can teach to them, which is the greatest gift that you can share. I wish you all the best with this, and I will see you next week.